5 Reasons Using Test Scores to Evaluate Teachers is a Bad Idea, episode 635. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn how you can get my personal planner pages and productivity system called Do What Matters,
the 10-minute teacher podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Recently, I came across the greatest column someone had shared on Facebook from 8th grade English teacher Jody Stallings. Now, Jody, you're head of the Charleston Teacher Alliance, but you also write a teacher-to-parent column in the Moultrie News. And interestingly, at first I thought Moultrie, Georgia. It's not Moultrie, Georgia. But today we're going to talk about 5 reasons using test scores in teacher evaluations is a bad idea. Where do we start?
Well, the first reason is teachers actually have far less of an impact on student learning than we think. I think when public education started, it was to help parents. Parents are the ones who have the key obligation to educate their children, instill values, and public education was there to help. But now that's kind of been reversed. It's like the expectation is that teachers will do this job for us and that parents don't have that much of a responsibility. So it's like Starbucks, where you just give your order and then it just kind of magically appears, and schools aren't like that. I marked it out once and I realized that in the first 18 years of life, students only attend school for about 13 years at 180 days per year for about 7 hours a day. And so that means that they're under the influence of school teachers only about 15% of the time, and the other 85% is parents. If you look at the impact any one teacher has on a student, it comes out to about 0.5%. If you condense the first 18 years of life into a 24-hour day, the whole school experience for a child will be less than 4 hours. And my part as a middle school teacher would last about a minute and a half. So unfortunately, teachers aren't quite as influential as everyone thinks that we are. Parents are actually a lot more responsible.
Okay, so you still think we're important. You're just saying that it's not all the teacher.
Absolutely. Very much important. Parents today wouldn't be able to do it without us, quite frankly. But the primary responsibility for educating any child is on the parent. And what teacher evaluations often fail to factor in is where the child is in relationship to that.
So you're saying that many times test scores are more highly correlated with the parent and what the parent has done than the teacher.
Absolutely. And through the Charleston Teacher Alliance, that's what I hear from teachers all over the region.
Wow. Okay. So this is definitely not a simple answer here. What's your second?
The second thing is that teachers often aren't allowed to hold students accountable for their own learning anymore. A lot of districts have gone away from retention. There's very little failure. We read recently about a Florida teacher who was fired for giving zeros to her students because they didn't turn in work. That district had a policy where the lowest grade was 50%. Now, a student who only gets 50% and then the threshold for passing is only 60%, what is this really teaching a child about his role in his own education? A lot of districts don't have summer school anymore, where students used to be held accountable for maybe being lazy in school. And parents and administrators are always looking at teachers saying, what are you doing to help these children? But with zero personal responsibility for learning placed on the children, the burden on teachers is really unsustainable.
Wow. So you're saying that would be the equivalent of if you decided to never go to school, but you expected to get half your salary anyway. No district would ever do that. Then why would we not allow students to hold accountable? Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, I do not like zeros, but zeros are earned.
Right. I think teachers don't like zeros because it represents failure, but failures should not be the end of the game for teachers. Failure is something that teachers should use to teach students that they can get right back on the horse, that there's another quiz coming around the bend. Let's see what we can do to do better on the next quiz. Let's not constantly be chasing all of the zeros that we amassed last week. Let's put that behind us and let's go forward and try to get better next time.
Well, and there's such a fine line between accountability and grace, which is kind of outside the scope of what we're talking. The
Yes.
teachers that never, ever take work late, and then a child has a bad week and they have no hope of passing. There's that side of it. But like we said, we're not going to go into that right now, but that's definitely a great point. Okay, what's the third?
The third is that disciplinary issues really make it difficult to reach most of the neediest kids. The movement today is to try to keep students in the classroom, and we all understand why we want to do that. No student can learn if they're outside the classroom. But if keeping the student in the classroom means keeping a distraction in the classroom, something that's distracting the teacher from doing his or her job or the students from learning, and those distractions actually ignite other distractions, then that's going to damage the educations of everybody. And you add to that, class sizes are way too large in general. And so a teacher goes to help one student, and as soon as they do, there might be 30 other kids in the class who now see that as a way to talk to each other and disrupt the learning of others. And so until the system can get a handle on how to create environments where academics are the focus and teachers don't have to just devote so much attention to discipline, it's hard to hold teachers fully accountable.
We're holding teachers accountable. There's also got to be accountability for the person who's learning and distracting. Okay, what's your fourth?
The fourth thing is that teachers lack autonomy. They want us to, there's an old coach who once said, you want me to prepare the meal, but you don't want me to buy any of the groceries. So districts are becoming very micromanagey of what goes on in the classroom. They kind of take this dartboard approach. A vendor might come to them and say, look, we've got this program, one size fits all. And so that goes into the classroom, and you take a lot of the artistry out of teaching. Teachers don't get to pick the textbooks they use anymore. They don't get to choose how they pace their course anymore. That's all prescribed for them. And so you want to hold a teacher accountable, but really when you look at how many decisions a teacher actually has in their power, it's very, very few anymore because districts are taking away that autonomy.
So it might even be the curriculum they've given you, or that you're not allowed to pace and stop things when you realize kids don't understand. I mean, there's so many factors that go in to not having the autonomy that you need. And I'm an advocate for autonomy for sure, that we should be held accountable, but we should also have the authority to do what needs to be done in our classroom to help teach. Okay, so what's our fifth?
Well, the fifth is just there's a big difference between holding teachers accountable for teaching and holding teachers accountable for student learning. I don't think any teacher is averse to being held accountable for what we do in the classroom. But what these evaluations are saying is that we're going to hold you accountable for how they are accepted. So you have many children who are really unwilling learners. Can you make a child eat something that he doesn't want to eat? If a child has no appetite, it doesn't matter how wonderfully you make the meal is going to go untouched. So for example, you take doctors. We don't judge doctors by the health of their patients necessarily. We judge them by their practices. I had a cousin who died in his early 40s of diabetes, and I'll never forget at his funeral, his brother stood up to give the eulogy, and his brother was so remorseful over his brother's death because he said he didn't take the medicine he was supposed to. He didn't use the diet that he was supposed to. And he was angry at his brother for not doing these things, because you can't hold the doctor accountable if the doctor's saying, here's what it takes in order for you to survive, and you choose not to do that. But that's exactly what's going on in the classroom. Teachers know that here's the homework that you need in order to get smarter. But if the student doesn't do it, it's not going to work. Here's the lesson, but if the student doesn't want to pay attention, how is he supposed to learn? So we really should evaluate teachers by the food they prepare, not by the appetites of the kids who are at the table.
Well, and I think, Jody, your argument is really pointing out the fallacy of 100% holding teachers accountable for those test scores, because what happens has been shown, Freakonomics, the book, wrote about this, that when you start incentivizing teachers for test scores, you start decentivizing your best teachers from wanting to go in the places where the kids need it the most. People don't want to tackle the tough situations because they know that they will be penalized with lower test scores because of the correlation of lower test scores with things like poverty or parenting or so many other things. And it really does hurt the students in the end by holding teachers accountable for just something like a score.
Right. Absolutely. And your example points out the problem. I know I have a very different level of success if I'm teaching students who are there to learn and whose parents have said, you go to school to learn, you behave, you do your homework, than if I'm in front of an audience of students who haven't been taught that at home. I can't possibly expect the outcomes to be exactly the same. And most teachers, like you say, are starting to realize that. And so they're fleeing the classroom.
Well, this is a difficult issue, and certainly, Jody, I don't think you or I would ever say we don't want to be held accountable It's
No.
just how would you hold us accountable that is fair to all concerned, doesn't hurt children, and is reasonable. And I think your analogy of doctors, doctors' schedules are full because people get sick, and classrooms are full because so many people need to learn. But they're all in a different place in their willingness and their abilities. And we want to reach every single child. But when children aren't numbers, and neither are teachers. And I think that a parent would resent if a kid walks in the classroom and we said, "Oh, you're a 50. You sit in the back. You're no good. You're a 50." Because they would say my child isn't a number. And the same thing happens when we start labeling teachers. And we also open ourselves up to something even more nefarious, which is teachers who feel like their only hope is to cheat. And we don't advocate cheating, but that has been behind many of the biggest cheating scandals that we've seen, for example, in my home state of Georgia.
No, that's right. We don't even as parents hold ourselves to that same level of accountability. For my children, we love our children. When you talk about teachers go into the classroom because they love kids. Well, nobody loves kids more than their own parents. And yet, as much as we love them, as much as we try to do the right things, sometimes our kids make decisions that go against what we would want them to do. It doesn't end up well. And that's not because we've done the wrong things, because our children have free will. As they get older, they're going to make decisions on their own. And sometimes those decisions aren't going to be on their best interest. And the same dynamic plays out in the classroom.
Okay, so a great conversation. Jody Stallings, he writes Teacher to Parent column. Tell us about that column and where we can find it.
Well, you can find it at moultrienews.com, and there's also a Facebook page called Teacher to Parent that I update every week. And it's parents will write me questions, and I will try to address those questions from the perspective of an experienced educator.
And thank you, Jody. People always ask me how I get so much done. I mean, I'm a full-time teacher, mom, and of course this podcast and blog and lots of other exciting things in life. Well, some time ago when my daughter was home for the summer, I collected my 108 forms and templates and also compiled an ebook sharing the productivity system that I use. It's called Do What Matters. Now, you can't get it on Amazon or any place like that, but you can purchase it directly from me because it includes not only the book, but the Excel templates and the PDFs. Go to coolcatteacher.com/planner. It costs $9.95. It includes a 72-page ebook, 108 pages in Excel templates, and 108 PDF copies of my planner pages. You can customize these and make them your own. That's what I do. I don't buy my planner pages from anybody else. I have made my own for years now, and it's part of my own system of productivity. So I hope you can start doing what matters. Check it out at coolcatteacher.com/planner.